I've always loved the quiet mornings in the city. From my window, I can see the streets of New York filling with life, the smell of freshly brewed coffee from the cafe on the corner, the sound of impatient horns, and the hurried footsteps of people who, like me, have a structured routine. I like that feeling of control. I like knowing that I'm the author of my own story. But it wasn't always this way. When I married Lucas, I thought I had found the perfect partner. He was charming, attentive, and made a point to remind me every day how much he loved me. At first, I believed every word, every promise. I thought I had finally found someone who saw me beyond my looks, beyond my last name. But over time, I started to notice something that had always been there. Lucas never loved me. He loved what he thought I represented. The problem is, he never knew the truth. I've always been discreet about my money. My family taught me early on that true wealth isn't flaunted, it's protected. So, I let him believe that I depended on him. I let him feel like the provider, the successful man who supported our comfortable life. It was easier that way. But looking back, I see how much that illusion cost me. This morning, as I prepare my tea, I feel a strange tightness in my chest. Lucas didn't come home last night. I could pretend it doesn't affect me, that I'm indifferent to his absence, but the truth is, I've known for weeks what's going on. The scent of women's perfume on his shirt, the deleted messages on his phone, the sudden work meetings that come out of nowhere. Everything screams betrayal. Why haven't I confronted him yet? Maybe because part of me wants to see how far he'll go with this. Maybe because deep down, I've already made my decision. But before anything else, I need proof. I head out for a walk in Central Park, something that always helps me clear my thoughts. The morning air is crisp, and the city feels even more alive with street musicians playing jazz and couples strolling hand in hand. At another time, I might have smiled at the sight. But now, everything feels distant, like I'm watching a movie I'm no longer a part of. Claire's words echo in my mind, my best friend, always the voice of reason. Jessica, are you sure he's being honest with you? Back then, I brushed it off, laughing and saying everything was fine. But now, I know Claire saw what I refused to see. Lucas has changed. He's not the man I thought I married, or maybe he never was. He's always been good at hiding his true nature. But I'm better. When I return to the apartment, I take a deep breath before picking up my phone. I open my email, and without meaning to, my eyes land on something unexpected. A hotel reservation receipt. Under his name. Dated last night. My heart clenches, but not with pain. It's a different feeling. A kind of relief. Now, I have the confirmation I needed. The game has begun. New York has always been a city of contrasts. While some rush through the streets in designer suits, their Rolex watches gleaming under the sun, others struggle to survive, selling coffee from makeshift carts on the corners. The city never sleeps, and I used to love that chaotic energy. But now, as I walk through the streets of the Upper East Side, I feel like everything around me is shifting, or maybe I'm the one finally waking up to a new reality. My penthouse is in one of Manhattan's most exclusive neighborhoods, a sleek, discreet building with doormen who know me by name and a lobby with a minimalist design. I've always been private, keeping a low profile, despite having access to everything money can buy. Unlike Lucas. He loved the flash, the high-profile parties, the connections with powerful businessmen, and every opportunity to flaunt a status he hadn't even earned on his own. I step into the apartment, and the silence greets me like an uncomfortable embrace. The air conditioning keeps the temperature steady, and the modern furniture reflects the light pouring in through the massive floor-to-ceiling windows. This place has always been a reflection of what I wanted my life to be: organized, sophisticated, balanced. But now, I realize that even the most flawless structure can hide invisible cracks. I sink into the Italian leather sofa and glance around. Every detail of this home was chosen by me: the Persian rug I bought on a trip to Turkey, the contemporary art on the walls, the carefully arranged books on the shelves. Lucas never cared about these things. To him, the apartment was just a trophy, proof of his success. A success that, ironically, was never really his. Beside the couch, on a small marble table, there's a framed photo from our wedding. I stare at it, analyzing every detail of my own face. My eyes sparkled that day. I was happy. Or at least, I thought I was. Lucas holds my hand firmly in the picture, his smile broad and confident. Now, I wonder how many lies were hidden behind that expression. A noise at the door pulls me from my thoughts. I turn to see Claire walking in, holding 2 cups of coffee and wearing a serious expression. "I brought reinforcements," she says, handing me one of the cups. I give a faint smile, but I know she can see the exhaustion in my eyes. Claire has been my best friend since college. She's always had a sharp instinct for noticing things others don't. "Are you okay?" she asks, sitting beside me. I take a sip of the coffee before answering. The strong, bitter taste wakes me up a little. "I think so. I mean, I already knew. I just didn't want to admit it." Claire lets out a sigh. "So, what are you going to do now?" I look at her, then let my gaze drift toward the window before responding. "I haven't decided yet. But one thing's for sure, he has no idea what's coming." Claire smirks knowingly. She understands that I'm not the kind of woman who takes betrayal lightly. I think back to the beginning of my relationship with Lucas. How he seemed like the perfect man, how he made me believe we could build something real together. But deep down, the signs were always there. The way his eyes wandered to younger women at social events. The way he thrived on attention, as if he needed validation from others to feel important. Now, he's involved with Kate. Young, ambitious, and probably convinced she's won some grand prize by having him. But what she doesn't know, what neither of them knows, is that the real power was never in his hands. I could confront him. I could throw the truth in his face and kick him out. But something inside me wants more than that. I want him to feel what it's like to lose everything. I want him to experience the helplessness, the deception, the lack of control, the same way he made me feel. But more than anything, I want him to learn the truth in the worst way possible. And when that moment comes, I'll be ready. The days following my discovery were a whirlwind of emotions. Knowing about Lucas's betrayal didn't just burn inside me, it ignited a fire I never knew I had. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't ordinary anger. It was something deeper, more calculated. I didn't just want him to pay for what he did, I wanted him to taste the sting of loss. But I couldn't just explode and reveal everything at once. That would be predictable, impulsive. I had to be smart, and for that, I needed more information. Claire, ever loyal, insisted that we hire a private investigator. If you want to catch him in the act, you need solid proof. Messages can be deleted, excuses can be made, but a photo? A video? That, he can't deny. I hesitated for a moment, but deep down, I knew she was right. And so, 2 nights later, I found myself sitting in a discreet Manhattan bar, waiting to meet the investigator she had recommended. When he arrived, a man in his 50s with graying hair and sharp eyes, he didn't waste any time. "Jessica, right? Let's get straight to the point. You want to know how long he's been seeing this woman, where they meet, and how often? I can get that for you. But if you want more, evidence that can be used in court, I can provide that too." I took a deep breath and nodded. "I want everything. Don't miss a single detail." He gave a small smirk, as if he had seen this scenario play out countless times before. "Consider it done." I walked out of that meeting with my heart racing. The plan was in motion. 3 days later, I received an email with the first pieces of evidence. Photos of Lucas leaving a boutique hotel in Soho with Kate, their hands intertwined like a couple in love. Others showed them having dinner at an upscale restaurant, sharing smiles and undeniable intimacy. But the worst one was a video, Lucas in the hotel lobby, pulling Kate close by the waist, whispering something in her ear before kissing her. I watched in silence, my heart pounding, but my mind remaining cold. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just felt a certainty solidify inside me. He thought he could discard me like an old accessory. But he had no idea who I really was. And then, fate handed me an unexpected advantage. As I reviewed the evidence, I noticed a small but significant detail in one of the photos, Lucas handing Kate an envelope, his expression serious, almost tense. The detective, noticing my hesitation as I studied the image, provided the information that would seal Lucas's downfall. He's been giving her money. And not just a little. The revelation hit me like an electric shock. Lucas wasn't just cheating on me. He was financially supporting Kate, with money he didn't even have. And that meant if I pulled the right thread, I could unravel the entire life he had built at my expense. I didn't reveal what I knew right away. I carried on as if nothing had changed. I cooked dinners, asked trivial questions, watched Lucas with a calmness that should have unsettled him. But he had no clue that with every smile I gave him, my mind was already designing his downfall. Then, the perfect night arrived to plant the first seed of doubt. We were having dinner at the apartment when I broke the silence with an offhand tone. "Have you ever heard of the Langston Hotel?" Lucas's fork paused midair for just a fraction of a second before continuing its motion. He wiped his mouth with a napkin. "I don't think so." "Why?" My smile was almost imperceptible. "I heard it's one of the best boutique hotels in Soho. A friend mentioned they have incredible suites, perfect for couples." I watched as he swallowed hard. "Oh, yeah, maybe." He averted his gaze, reaching for his wine glass, his grip just a little too rigid. I wanted to laugh. His mask was starting to crack. In the days that followed, I planted more subtle hints. I casually brought up finances, investments, and how some people underestimated their wives. Every time I touched on these topics, Lucas seemed more unsettled. He became distant, which only confirmed that my plan was working. Then, one night, I made my final move. I waited until Lucas left, claiming he had a meeting. As soon as he walked out of the apartment, I went into his office, where he kept important documents. And there it was, exactly what I was looking for, bank statements. He had been transferring money to Kate using our joint account. Did he really think I wouldn't notice? That very night, I did what needed to be done. I contacted my lawyer and set things in motion to separate our finances, ensuring all my assets were protected. And then, I waited. I waited for the exact moment Lucas would realize his house of cards was collapsing. And when that moment came, I wanted to see it with my own eyes. The first phase of my plan was underway, but I knew bringing Lucas down wouldn't be that simple. Men like him always find a way to rebuild, to latch onto another victim, to fund their delusions of grandeur. If I truly wanted him to feel the weight of his choices, I had to go further. And that's where Claire became a key piece of my strategy. "Do you want revenge, Jess?" Claire asked as we sipped our coffee at a small French bistro in the Upper East Side. "Because if this is just about exposing him, we already have enough proof. But if you want to play, I know someone who can help." I looked at her with curiosity. Claire always had the most unexpected connections: journalists, lawyers, business executives. She knew influential people in all kinds of social circles. "Who?" I asked. She smirked before answering. "An investment broker who's dealt with cases like this before." "Does your husband have any debts?" "Not that I know of, but he has expensive habits." "Perfect," she replied. "Let's find out." A few days later, Claire introduced me to Sophie, a corporate finance expert and fraud investigator. She was a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her 40s. "Your husband has been moving money around in a suspicious way for months," she said after reviewing some documents I had taken from Lucas's office. "He's been making risky investments with money that clearly isn't his. I've seen this pattern before. He might be using your name to secure financing." My blood ran cold. "Are you saying he could be involving me in something illegal?" "If he hasn't already, he's very close to it." It was worse than I imagined. Lucas wasn't just cheating on me, he was using our financial reputation to make reckless bets in the market. If something went wrong, I could be the one left paying for his mistakes. Sophie advised me to take immediate action to cut off his access to my assets, and I followed every step of her plan. Within days, my accounts were secured. But that wasn't enough. I wanted him to feel the weight of his recklessness. That's when Sophie proposed something even bolder. What if we make it look like one of his business ventures collapsed? Something big enough to force him to reveal his debts. The idea was risky, but brilliant. I had contacts in the financial world, and with a few well-placed rumors, we could destabilize Lucas's investments. Not enough to destroy him, at least not yet, but enough to push him into desperation. And he fell for it. Meanwhile, I decided to dig deeper into Kate. I wanted to understand what she saw in Lucas, and more importantly, if she knew she was being used. It was easier than I expected. With Claire's help, I managed to get into a corporate event where Kate would be attending. I put on a sleek black dress, slipped into my highest heels, and walked into the venue as if I were just another curious investor. And that's when I saw her. Kate was exactly as I had imagined, young, beautiful, and clearly mesmerized by Lucas. But what surprised me was something different, the flicker of doubt in her eyes as she spoke with him. I ordered a drink and watched. They were standing in a secluded corner, Lucas gesturing animatedly while Kate frowned, looking uneasy. Then, something unexpected happened. She abruptly pulled away from him, grabbed her purse, and walked out of the event in a hurry. Something was wrong. I slipped out discreetly and followed her to the exit, where I saw her lean against the wall, taking a deep breath. I approached slowly, pretending to be waiting for a taxi. Men can be exhausting, don't you think? I said casually. She glanced at me with a tired smile. You have no idea. Actually, I think I do. Her brow arched slightly. What do you mean? I took a sip of my drink before responding. Lucas has that effect on women. At first, he seemed charming. But then, her eyes widened slightly. You know him? I gave a small, knowing smile. Let's just say I've been in your shoes. For a moment, Kate stood completely still. Then, she sighed, running a hand through her hair. I knew something was off. He always says he's getting divorced, that his ex-wife is cold and distant. But none of it makes sense. He's always nervous, always secretive. I don't know what to believe anymore. And at that moment, I realized Kate wasn't just the mistress. She was his next victim. Because Lucas hadn't just used me, he was about to use her too. And if I played this right, I might just turn her against him. The conversation with Kate gave me an idea. If I could convince her that Lucas had been lying to both of us, she might help me expose him publicly. So, I did something Lucas would never expect. I asked him to meet me at his favorite restaurant. When he arrived, he sat across from me with a smug smile. Is this a truce? I crossed my arms and locked eyes with him. Let's just say it's a new beginning. But for you, it might be the beginning of the end. He chuckled, but there was something in his expression, something that told me he was beginning to sense danger. Little did he know that soon, everything he had built would come crashing down before his eyes. And me? I would be there to watch every second of it. I was about to destroy Lucas from the inside out. Every piece of my plan was carefully placed, and now, all I had to do was pull the right thread to unravel his entire life. But what I didn't expect was that, just as I was about to play my final card, an unexpected revelation would change the game entirely. It all happened that night. The restaurant where Lucas and I met was one of his favorites, one of those upscale Manhattan establishments where the financial elite gathered for strategic dinners. The soft lighting reflected off the silverware, and the aroma of gourmet dishes filled the air. I had chosen this place on purpose. I wanted him to be in his element, comfortable, completely unaware of what was coming. Lucas walked in with his usual rehearsed smile, exuding a confidence that no longer impressed me. You've been acting mysterious lately, he said, placing his Rolex on the table and watching me carefully. Does this mean you've finally realized our marriage is worth more than some petty argument? I crossed my legs and tilted my head slightly, feigning mild curiosity. Or maybe I've realized there are things more valuable than keeping up appearances, I replied. He laughed, shaking his head, clearly underestimating what I was about to do. And what exactly do you mean by that? I slowly reached into my designer handbag and pulled out an envelope. I placed it on the table and slid it toward him. These are all the proofs of your affair. Photos, videos, financial transactions to Kate. Everything is documented. His smile vanished instantly. His eyes scanned the first few photos, and his jaw clenched. Where the hell did you get this? He tossed the photos aside, glancing around nervously as if afraid someone might be listening. Never underestimate a woman who knows exactly who she's dealing with, I murmured, taking a sip of my wine. Lucas stared at me for a few seconds, and for the first time I saw something different in his eyes. It wasn't just anger. It was panic. What do you want? His voice was lower now, hesitant. I want you to sign the divorce papers. No contest. No attempt to take anything from me. I want you out of my life without a cent. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. And if I don't? I smiled and pulled out a second envelope. This time, he didn't even need to open it to understand. This one contains proof that you used our name to secure illegal investments. I could hand it over to a judge, to the financial authorities. The color drained from his face. Lucas had always been arrogant, but he was never stupid. He knew that if I followed through, his reputation and career would be destroyed. He glared at me with pure hatred. You've always been a snake, haven't you? Pretending to be the perfect wife while scheming in the shadows. I leaned in slightly, locking eyes with him. And you've always been a fraud. The only difference is, I learned to play the game better than you. He ran a hand over his face, visibly shaken. Then, suddenly, something unexpected happened. His phone vibrated on the table. He glanced at the screen and frowned. The name Kate lit up on the display. He hesitated before picking it up. I just watched. Feeling the pressure, he answered. Lucas, for God's sake, we need to talk. I found out everything. My curiosity spiked. Lucas, on the other hand, froze. This isn't a good time, he whispered. You lied to me. You told me your marriage was already over. You said you had nothing left with her. But now I know the truth. I blinked slowly. So that was it? Kate wasn't as naive as I had thought. Kate, not now. Can we talk later? Later? Her voice was shaky. Lucas, I'm pregnant. The entire restaurant seemed to freeze. My eyes widened slightly, but I quickly regained my composure. Lucas, on the other hand, went completely pale. What? Yes. And now I find out you never planned on divorcing her? That you used my money to cover your bets? My heart pounded. So that was it. Lucas wasn't just cheating on me, he was also draining Kate's finances to support his lifestyle. Now, everything made sense. Kate, I can explain. I already explained everything to my brother. And guess what? He's a lawyer. And now, I will go to hell and back to destroy you, Lucas. She hung up. Lucas dropped his phone onto the table, looking completely dazed. I crossed my arms and watched him in silence for a moment. Funny, I murmured with a small smile. Looks like you're running out of allies. He stared at me, lost for words. For the first time, he was completely cornered. And me? I simply leaned back in my chair and savored every second. The game had changed. Now, it wasn't just me against Lucas. Kate was playing too. And he had no idea what was coming. The silence between me and Lucas in the restaurant was almost deafening. His gaze, once filled with arrogance and self-assurance, now wavered between shock and desperation. He was trying to process everything that had just happened, my revelation about his financial fraud, Kate's sudden turn against him, and of course, the bombshell that had just been dropped, her pregnancy. I, on the other hand, felt strangely calm. As if I had finally reached the moment I had been waiting for all along. But this wasn't the end. There was still more to be done. Lucas cleared his throat, trying to regain his footing. Jessica, listen. This is all just a big misunderstanding. I let out a quiet laugh, shaking my head. A misunderstanding? Are you telling me you accidentally got your mistress pregnant? Or that you somehow transferred money to her by mistake while gambling on risky investments? He opened his mouth but said nothing. For the first time, he knew there was no way out. You destroyed me, Jessica, he muttered, running a hand over his face. No, Lucas, I crossed my arms, leaning slightly forward. You destroyed yourself. He fell silent. The look of a man who had finally realized he had lost everything. The next morning, the fallout began to take shape. My lawyer had already started the divorce proceedings, and Sophie made sure all my assets were protected. But the real blow for Lucas came when Kate decided to strike back. Not only did she kick him out of the apartment he had rented for the two of them, but she also exposed all his dirty secrets to their social circle. Her brother, a powerful attorney, promised to take legal action, especially if Lucas tried to evade his responsibilities toward the child. But the worst was yet to come. That afternoon, Lucas called me. I ignored it. A few minutes later, a message popped up on my phone. Jessica, meet me. Please. I owed him nothing. But something inside me wanted to see just how far he had fallen. And so, I found myself meeting him at the hotel where, ironically, he used to meet Kate. He was sitting at the bar, nursing a glass of whiskey. When he saw me, he forced a smile, but the gleam of confidence in his eyes was long gone. You really did it. You reduced me to nothing. I sat across from him, crossing my legs. You did that to yourself, Lucas. He let out a heavy sigh. You don't understand. Everything I did. I just wanted more. I wanted to be someone. I rolled my eyes. And for that, you had to destroy everything around you? Cheat on your wife, deceive your mistress, steal money? He stared at me for a long moment before finally admitting. Yes. For the first time, Lucas was honest. But it was far too late. Then you deserve exactly what you have now, I said, standing up. As I walked away, I noticed he didn't try to stop me. He knew there was nothing left to say. In the days that followed, I felt something unexpected, lightness. I was free. For the first time in years, I no longer had to carry the weight of a failed marriage or worry about Lucas's lies. Curiously, Kate reached out to me. I should hate you, you know, she said with a wry smile. Yeah, I know, I replied. But in the end, I think I owe you a thank you. If it weren't for you, I'd still be trapped in the illusion he created. I just smiled. The truth always comes out, Kate. Always. And with that, we said our goodbyes. Lucas, on the other hand, vanished from the city. Some said he tried to recover his lost money, but failed. Others claimed he had been forced to leave Manhattan once his fraud started being investigated. But to me, it didn't matter. Because I had already won. And the best part? He knew it too. The months that followed were all about rebuilding. Not just my life, but my identity. For years, I had been Lucas's wife, the elegant woman standing in the background while he flaunted a life that had never truly belonged to him. But now, without him, without his name next to mine, who was I? That question echoed in my mind as I walked through the streets of Manhattan on a crisp autumn morning. The wind carried golden leaves across the pavement, and I watched the people around me, feeling strangely free. For the first time in years, I didn't have to prove anything to anyone. And that was how my true transformation began. There were still loose ends to tie up. The divorce was in progress, and even though Lucas was ruined, he was still trying to negotiate a piece of my fortune. He's not entitled to anything, my lawyer assured me. But that doesn't mean he won't try to pull something. I already expected Lucas to fight until the bitter end. He had always believed he could manipulate any situation in his favor. And then, one day, I received an unexpected email. It was from him. Jessica, I need to see you. Please. Just one last time. My first instinct was to ignore it. But then I realized, this was the last piece of the puzzle. The final thread I needed to cut. So, I agreed to meet him. This time, I chose the place, a quiet cafe in Brooklyn, far from the ostentatious spots he used to frequent. When I arrived, Lucas was already there, sitting at a table. His suit no longer looked as impeccable. Dark circles framed his tired eyes. He was no longer the man I once knew. Thanks for coming, he started. I crossed my arms, waiting. I know I messed up. I know I destroyed everything. But I just wanted you to know that, in the beginning, at least in the beginning, I really did love you. I let out a small laugh, shaking my head. Lucas, you don't know what love is. You love the idea of power. Of status. Of control. He lowered his gaze, and for the first time I saw real regret in his eyes. But it was far too late. What do you want from me? I asked. He took a deep breath. Nothing. I just wanted to look into your eyes one last time before I disappear for good. I stayed silent for a moment. Good luck, Lucas. You're going to need it. Then, I stood up and walked away. Without looking back. After the divorce was finalized, I felt as if a massive weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Over time, I transformed my life in ways I had never imagined. I went back to investing in things that truly mattered to me, social projects, art, travel. I spent time in Europe, exploring cities I had always wanted to visit. I took courses I never had time for before. And, most importantly, I rediscovered the joy of being alone. I didn't need a man to define me. I never had. And that was the greatest lesson Lucas, without meaning to, had ever taught me. One night, months later, I received a message from Claire. Did you see the news? Curious, I opened the link she sent. It was an article about a financial scandal involving Lucas. He had tried to rebuild himself with a new scheme, but this time, he had been exposed and was now facing criminal charges. I thought about how he could have had it all. He could have had a comfortable life by my side if it weren't for his greed. But in the end, he chose his own downfall. And me? I was finally free. I should have felt at peace. The divorce papers were finalized, my fortune was secure, and Lucas finally seemed to be out of my life. But there was something that unsettled me, an eerie feeling that this wasn't over yet. And I was right. The first sign came in an unexpected phone call from Claire. "Jess, we need to meet. Now." Her tone made me drop everything and rush to our usual cafe. When I arrived, I found Claire sitting in a corner booth, her eyes fixed on her phone. As soon as she saw me, she slid the device across the table. "Read this." The article on the screen made my stomach turn. Former Wall Street executive accused of financial fraud disappears before court hearing. I took a deep breath, trying to process. What does this mean? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Claire looked at me seriously. It means Lucas is on the run. And no one knows where he is. I shouldn't have been surprised. Lucas had always been a survivor, someone who clung to any opportunity to escape the consequences of his actions. But what worried me wasn't his disappearance. It was what he might do next. And my intuition was right again. 2 days later, I found an envelope slipped under my apartment door. No sender. Just my name, written by hand. My heart pounded as I opened it. Inside, a single note. "Don't think this is over." A chill ran down my spine. Claire was furious when I told her. "Is he threatening you? This is pathetic. You should take this to the police." But something told me Lucas wasn't bluffing. He was too proud to accept defeat. And then, things got even worse. In the middle of all this chaos, I received a call from an unknown number. "Jessica? It's me, Kate." My first reaction was pure shock. Since the last time we saw each other, Kate had disappeared from my life, focused on rebuilding her own. "What's going on?" I asked, feeling a sudden chill. Lucas reached out to me. I gripped the phone tighter. What did he want? To tell me that everything was a mistake. That he needs me. That he still loves me. She let out a humorless laugh. But I'm not an idiot. He just wants a safe place to hide because he knows no one else will help him. My mind started working fast. "And what did you say?" She hesitated before answering. I told him I needed time to think. But honestly, I don't know what to do. He seems desperate, Jessica. And when men like him are desperate, they become dangerous. She was right. Lucas, cornered, broke, and without allies, was unpredictable. And the worst part? He still saw me as the reason for all his problems. "Where is he?" I asked. "I don't know. But he wants to meet me tomorrow night, at a hotel outside the city. He said he wants one last chance." I knew exactly what that meant. Lucas wasn't trying to win Kate back. He was trying to use her. And if I did nothing, he might drag her down with him. That's when I made my decision. "I'm going with you." Kate gasped. "What? Are you insane? If he's really desperate, he won't take hesitation well. And if he's planning something, you can't go alone. I want to see how he reacts when he realizes he has no control over us anymore." She was silent for a long moment, before letting out a deep sigh. "You're crazy, Jessica." "Not as crazy as he is." The next day was a blur of tension and anxiety. Claire, of course, hated the plan. "This is dangerous. He could be armed, he could have people with him, he could." I placed my hand over hers to calm her. "I need to do this, Claire. I need to end this the right way." As night fell, Kate and I drove together to the hotel Lucas had chosen. It was a rundown place, far below the standards he used to frequent. A sign that his situation was even worse than we had imagined. In the parking lot, I glanced at Kate. She looked nervous. "If he tries anything," she started. "Don't worry," I said, my voice steady. "I'm ready." And I was. In the pocket of my coat, a voice recorder was already running. If Lucas tried anything, we'd have proof. We stepped into the hotel lobby. and it didn't take long to spot him. Lucas was sitting at one of the bar tables, nursing a strong drink, his gaze lost in thought. When he saw us, a smile spread across his face. "Didn't expect to see you here, Jessica." I slowly sat across from him, crossing my legs and meeting his gaze directly. "I thought it would be interesting to watch your last desperate move, before you disappear for good." He chuckled, but there was something different in his eyes. Something dark. "You too. I should have known you'd team up against me." "It's not against you, Lucas," Kate said, her voice steady. "It's for ourselves." For a moment, he just observed us. And then, his smile faded. "You think you've won, don't you?" The tension at the table thickened. I watched as he slid something onto the table. "An envelope." "What's this?" I asked. He just smirked. "The only proof that this story isn't over." I opened the envelope, and what I saw made my breath hitch. A photograph of me. Taken weeks ago, at the exact moment I was handing divorce documents to my lawyer. But the most disturbing part? In the corner of the image, reflected in the glass, was Lucas. Watching me from afar. He had always been nearby. Always knew my every move. "This is a warning, Jessica." His voice was calm, but heavy with threat. "You may have won this battle. But I'm still here." My heart pounded, but I didn't let it show. Lucas hadn't given up. And now, the real war was about to begin. The rundown hotel where Lucas had been waiting already had an ominous feel, but now, knowing he had been watching me all along, the air felt even heavier. A chill ran down my spine, but I kept my expression firm. Lucas still thought he had control of the situation. But he was about to learn one final lesson. I calmly placed the photo back in the envelope, keeping my eyes locked on his. "And what exactly do you want, Lucas?" My voice was cold, steady. He leaned in slightly, his smirk returning. "I want a chance to start over." I let out a dry laugh. "Start over? After everything you've done?" He sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Jessica, think about it. You ruined me. Destroyed my reputation, my business, my life. The least you could do is help me." I glanced at Kate, who was gripping the edge of the table tightly. Her eyes burned with disgust. "He's unbelievable," she muttered. Lucas ignored her. "Here's my offer," he continued. "You give me some financial compensation. Something discreet, nothing excessive. In return, I disappear. For good." I let out a low chuckle, shaking my head. "You want money?" "Yes." "Nothing crazy. Just enough to start over." Anger simmered inside me. After everything, he still believed I owed him something. "No. You're not getting a single cent from me, Lucas." His smile vanished instantly. His jaw clenched, and his eyes darkened. "Are you sure about that?" I felt Kate tense beside me. "I know you don't want me talking to the press. I know you'd rather keep your reputation intact." And there it was. The threat. "You think you have something on me, Lucas?" I asked, unfazed. "I already destroyed everything you built. There's nothing left to expose." He stared at me for several long seconds. Then, something in his gaze shifted. He realized that, for the first time, he had no power over me. And that destroyed him. Lucas shot up from his seat, knocking over his chair. A few customers in the bar turned to look, but no one intervened. His fists clenched, his breathing heavy, but he did nothing. He had nothing left to do. Kate and I stood at the same time. "It's over, Lucas," I said firmly. "You lost." He stood there, frozen, eyes burning with hatred. "You were never as perfect as you thought you were, Jessica. And you were never as smart as you thought you were." I turned and walked away. Kate followed. But before we stepped out of the hotel, she glanced back one last time. "And Lucas, I hope you learn how to be a real man, because now, you actually have something to lose." Her gaze softened as she placed a hand on her belly. Lucas blinked but said nothing. And just like that, we left him behind. Forever. The next day, I fulfilled my final promise to myself. The press exposed Lucas's financial scandal. He could no longer run. And to ensure he never had any influence again, Kate and I came forward with the truth about the schemes he had tried to pull on us. Within weeks, he became a laughingstock in the social circles he had once worshipped. And in the end, his own pride was what destroyed him for good. Months later, I sat on the balcony of my new apartment, gazing at the city below. The feeling of freedom was indescribable. Claire arrived carrying 2 glasses of wine, handing me one. "You did it, Jess." I smiled at her, taking a deep breath. "Yeah. I did." What Lucas never understood, even in the end, was that I never needed to defeat him. I just needed to free myself. And now, finally, I was free. The morning sun reflected off New York skyscrapers as I walked along Fifth Avenue, absorbing the city's vibrant energy. This time, everything felt different. For the first time in years, I wasn't burdened by the weight of a failed marriage, the pressure of pretending to be happy, or the worry of keeping up with Lucas's lies. I was free. Lucas's downfall unfolded exactly as planned. After the truth about his financial schemes surfaced, he became persona non grata in the circles that once adored him. No one wanted to be associated with a man who had deceived so many, and, more importantly, who had been deceived by his own ambitions. The last thing I heard about him was that he had left the city in a hurry, running from the consequences he could no longer control. But to me, that no longer mattered. Because, for the first time, my life was no longer tied to him. Kate and I kept in touch, though more distantly. She was focused on her pregnancy and the new life she was building. In our last conversation, she admitted something that surprised me. "I used to think I needed Lucas to be happy. But in the end, he's the one who freed me from an illusion. And now, I can do this my way." She no longer wanted to carry the weight of the past. She wanted to raise her child without fear, without regrets. And to me, that was enough. Claire, on the other hand, remained my best friend and biggest confidant. That night, as we toasted on my apartment balcony, she made a comment that stayed with me. "Do you think you would have gotten out of this if it weren't for everything he did?" I thought for a moment before answering. Maybe not. Maybe I needed to be broken so I could rebuild myself into something better. Because, deep down, that was the truth. I had spent years living a life that was never truly mine. But now, I had the chance to do something different. I refocused on my career and investments, but with a new perspective. Before, I worked just to maintain a structure that felt safe. Now, I worked because I loved it. Because I wanted to build something that was truly mine. I traveled. I met new people. And, most importantly, I learned to be at peace with myself. And that's how, one day, while walking through an art gallery in Soho, I realized what had really changed. I no longer saw myself as the betrayed wife. I no longer saw myself as the woman who had been used and deceived. I was just Jessica. And for the first time, that was enough.